Well, for further analysis, joining us from Bologna, Italy, is Francesco Sassi. He's a professor of energy geopolitics at the University of Oslo. Thank you very much for joining us, Francesco. So let's look at the politics of this. In terms of this situation, it seems to be at the moment, well, according to the US president, benefiting the US more than Venezuela.
It is. It is certainly true. And this is actually the prospects of having Venezuelan oil refined in the US and sold abroad, and something of a stewardship of the US over what Venezuela can produce and export in terms of oil. But this is not really an issue right now. A reality on the ground is more a narrative, a story that the White House has made up in order to control the narrative after the capture of Maduro. But we don't know what will happen to the country in the next weeks, months, if we will have democratic elections or not. And the fate of Venezuela is really tied to the future and the fate of the oil production and export. So this is how the U.S. is trying to somehow unlock the future of the country and tie the future of the country to the US, somehow boxing China and Russia out of the country.
Francesco,
and find a way to move.
You mentioned there China and Russia, and that was going to be my next question. I mean, where are they sitting here? Because they have vested interests in Venezuela, and then, of course, we have Saudi Arabia's interests.
Yeah, well, Venezuela is, first of all, an open country. So all oil producers around the world are looking very closely to what is happening in Venezuela right now and how the relationship with the U.S. unfolds. Let me just say that China and Russia have different perspectives of what is going on in Venezuela. At least China is in part dependent on Venezuelan oil imports, even though this is just a relatively small amount of oil imported in China compared to the total volumes of oil imported from the Middle East, from Russia, from other countries in Africa. On the other hand, Russia looks at Venezuela as a market to export naphtha and other diluents that are used in the Venezuelan oil industry in order to produce the Venezuelan oil grades and then export them to other markets. The problem is that this country is too close to the U.S. Right now, and the U.S., the national security strategy, perceives Venezuela and what happens in Latin America as a priority interest for the U.S. And so the influence of the country, the influence of Washington is going to extend not just in Venezuela, but the broader picture here is the projection of the U.S. power in Latin America and the control also of the hydrocarbon industry.
And you mentioned there, Francesco, the control that the US has exerted. How much was this about regime change, and how much is it about the oil and getting control of that oil, bearing in mind that we just heard that America is the 9th biggest producer of oil in the world?
Well, I have a question for you. Did the regime in Venezuela change overnight? No. The Chavismo is still there. There's just Maduro that has been captured, and this is a very symbolic gesture that the U.S. has made to all countries in the world and all countries producing oil, and also at the same time a projection of the national security strategy in Latin America and a message to these countries like Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, all energy producers and all interested by the Trump administration foreign policy. I'm not seeing a very easily changed regime and democratic regime in Venezuela in the coming weeks or months on free elections. What is apparently in the interest of the U.S. is stability of this regime, because it's this regime the U.S. government is bidding on in order to create this sort of increased oil tie and partnership between the U.S. and Venezuela.
We really appreciate you breaking down these complexities. Francesco Sassi, Professor of Energy Geopolitics at the University of Oslo, thank you.